Welcome to The Explainer, where we break down complex topics using the sources themselves. Today, we're tackling a big one, a paradox you see playing out in politics all the time. Why do so many voters of faith rally behind leaders whose personal lives seem to completely contradict their moral code? Let's get into it.
So, why do they do it? On the surface, it looks like a total contradiction, right? But when you really start digging into the thinking behind it, you find it's not that simple. It's actually a huge clash between two very powerful and very different ideas. On one side of this clash, you have a call for righteousness. This is that deep scriptural commitment to biblical morality. It's the idea that a leader's character isn't just a nice to have. No, it's everything. It's the absolute foundation. But then, on the other side, you've got this calculation for power. This is where pragmatism kicks in. It's a laser focus on winning, on getting certain policies passed, even if that means you have to team up with leaders who, well, don't exactly fit that perfect moral mold. And this is where it gets really tricky. You've got these two very different standards, but you only get one vote. For a lot of people, this forces a really tough choice. And from the outside, it can look like a huge double standard, shining a light on this massive struggle between principle and power. All right, Section 1, the biblical ideal for leaders. So to really get to the bottom of this, we have to start with the baseline. What's the ideal standard? According to the texts themselves, what is a leader supposed to look like? Well, the starting point is pretty clear. Sources like breakpoint.org put it plainly. Character is not a bonus feature, it's the ground floor. It's the very foundation that all good decision-making is built on. And when you dig into the biblical texts, you can actually pull out a pretty specific list of qualifications. Things like reverence for God, honesty, faithfulness, you can see them right here. And look, these aren't framed as friendly suggestions. They're presented as the absolute essentials, like a commitment to justice and helping the oppressed. The one big idea that ties all of this together is this word, righteousness. And that's not just about being a good person. It's way deeper. We're talking about a standard of behavior that's measured against divine perfection, and it especially focuses on how a leader treats other people and protects their rights. Okay, Section 2, pragmatism, policy, and power. So we have the ideal, right? But that ideal is about to run smack into the messy, complicated world of real politics. This is where that other logic comes in, the pragmatic calculation, where power and policy can start to feel a lot more important. And this really shows you the fundamental trade-off. On one side, you have prophetic purity, holding to a perfect moral standard even if it means you lose. On the other side, policy victories, securing your goals like judicial appointments by aligning with a flawed leader who can get it done. It all boils down to a question. What do you prioritize, character or results? All right, Section 3, a double standard of ethics. So this whole pragmatic approach, it leads to something that's frankly pretty controversial. It creates what looks a whole lot like a double standard. And you can see it plain as day when you compare the standards for a pastor versus a politician. For church leaders, the ethical bar is set incredibly high. Codes of ethics, like this one from the CRC, are rooted right in Scripture. It's all about justice, compassion, loyalty, and humility. And this isn't just talk. Pastors are expected to be humble, financially transparent, and morally pure. They're held accountable. There's just very little wiggle room. And this is where that double standard just becomes impossible to ignore. Look at the column for a pastor. A failure in any of these categories, it's probably career-ending. But for a political ally, those exact same issues are often tolerated, dismissed, or even spun as a sign of strength, as long as they deliver the political wins. Okay, Section 4, the prophetic confrontation model. But there's another way to look at all this, a completely different model you find in the biblical texts. And this one, it throws that whole idea of pragmatic compromise right out the window. Yeah, this model isn't about getting a seat at the table. It's more like flipping the table over. The idea, as Culture Watch points out, is that figures like Jesus were following the prophets, and their main job was to speak truth to power, to challenge rulers directly, no matter who they were. The classic example of this is John the Baptist. He didn't try to negotiate with King Herod or find common ground. No way. He called him out, publicly, for his personal life, for taking his brother's wife. And here's the key. This wasn't just John's opinion. He was holding the king accountable to God's own law from the book of Leviticus. And the consequence for speaking that truth? He was beheaded. It cost him everything. This path wasn't about gaining influence. It was about conviction. And this wasn't just about personal sin either. The prophets constantly challenged leaders on issues of social justice. They'd ask these sharp, pointed questions, like this one from Isaiah. What do you mean by crushing my people, by grinding the face of the poor? Now, here's a really fascinating point. In a way, the prophets were conservative, not in a modern political sense, but in the sense that they weren't inventing some new radical morality. They were calling leaders back to the traditional, established laws of justice they had abandoned. Okay, Section 5, the unresolved moral crisis. So we're left with these two competing, almost mutually exclusive models for how to engage with the world. And believe me, this isn't some dusty historical debate. This is a very real moral crisis playing out right now. So you've got the pragmatic path, partner with flawed leaders, make compromises, but get things done. And you've got the prophetic path, confront power with the truth, even if it costs you all your influence. The choice between these two exposes a deep crisis in moral authority. And really, the biggest thing to take away from this is that this is not a new problem. Not at all. This is a timeless tension, an ancient struggle between getting your hands dirty to shape the world and trying to keep your hands clean to witness to a higher standard. Which leaves us all with the ultimate question, doesn't it? It's a question every single voter has to answer for themselves. When power is on the line, where is the line? The search for that answer continues to define the very turbulent intersection of faith and politics today.